So here's the thing. We were gonna order like just some replacement books for books that were in good shape. And in the media center, they don't want us to order books. They want us to just have online access to books. So we just decided as a math department to get your opinion on this, and I know it won't affect you guys. And in this class, think, I make up worksheets. Don't think about that. Think about when you had geometry, you use the book more, right? Would you rather have online on your MacBook, or would you rather have a book? If you had to make a choice. How many, and there's no right or wrong answer. How many would like the book? 5, 6. Okay. And then how about online? All right. So we're just doing that throughout the day today, just to see how our kids feel about that. And then hopefully that will help us make a decision. So, all right. So today we are going to go on and we are going to finish up this lesson. And we talked last week about when you divide, what you have to do is change it to multiply and flip these two. So on the top, we'd still have 2m minus 1. On the bottom, we'd have m squared minus 3m minus 10. We'd multiply it, and I'd switch these two. So the top would be 4m plus 8. The bottom would be 4m squared minus 1. Okay. Now what we're going to do, if you look, is try to factor as much as we can. This one right here, when you have just two terms like that, you're going to look at, is there something I can take out front that goes into both of these? And there's not. There's also not a squared, so I don't have to think a difference of squares. So what that means is that's factored as much as it can. Okay. Then when I go down to this one, that's one that I have to do trinomial factoring. And I think on your worksheet, I did not make the box and this for you. So if you still use those, that's absolutely fine. You'll just have to make them. But if it's m squared minus 3m minus 10, you can go right to here and say you need two factors of negative 10 that add up to negative 3. Now, can you guys think of two numbers that multiply to give you negative 10 that add up to a negative 3? Negative 5 and 2. Okay. So what that means is you can still go back to the box and get your factors. But if this is minus minus and you want to kind of skip that step, that's this fourth one where one is plus and one is minus. If that's m squared, this is m and m. And then one of your factors is a negative 5. So I put the 5 by the minus and the 2 by the plus. Okay. Now on top here, I can factor out a 4. So I have to take that 4 out front and I look at 4 times what is 4m. So that's m. And 4 times what is 8, that's 2. Now this bottom one is difference of squares. And how I know that, this is squared. 4 is a perfect square. And 1 is a perfect square. Okay. So here's what we have. Difference of squares, one's plus, one's minus. I have m squared, so I do m and m. Then what you do for the 4 is a perfect square, so you take the square root of it, and the square root of 4 is 2 and 2. And then in these two places, I take the square root of 1. And the square root of 1 is 1. And again, on this that you have, it has the perfect squares. I think it's on the back of your factoring sheet. Okay. So now I have everything factored, and now I'm to the point where I can cross things out. So if I go to cross things out, I have a 2m minus 1 and a 2m minus 1. I have m plus 2 and m plus 2. And then what I'm left with on top is a 4. That's it. On the bottom, I have two things in parentheses, m minus 5 and 2m plus 1. And we do not multiply that back out. You leave it just like that. Okay, so this is your answer. Now, I don't know if you guys remember last week, Tuesday, we talked about this problem. This type of problem is a ton of work because you're factoring 3 trinomials, which takes a while. Okay, and this one's multiplied, so I don't have to change anything. So what I'm going to do is try to just factor top, bottom. Do you guys get this x minus 4 is not going to change? There's nothing I can take out of that, so that's just going to stay as x minus 4. And this is a trinomial, so I can put my 2 parentheses for that. Okay. Now, if I start with this top one, I have a minus and a minus, which when you have a minus and a minus, you have one of each. You have one plus and one minus. If you have x squared, you're going to have x and x. And what you're going to do is find 2 factors of a negative 21 that add up to negative 4. You guys think what that would be? Negative 7 and a positive 3. Yep. So what that means, I put the 7 by the minus, I put the 3 by the plus. So the reason I'm showing you it a little different way is if you can get away from the box and the table, it's just a little quicker, but either way works. Now let's go to this one. This is the one where it's minus and a plus. When it's minus and a plus, that means you have 2 negatives. Okay, so you have a negative and a negative. This is x squared, so we do x and x. And then we have 8. So what are 2 factors of 8? And we could do this. They're both negative and they add up to negative 6, negative 4, and negative 2. So one of these would be a 2, one would be a 4. Doesn't matter which you do which. This one I couldn't factor. And now if I go down to this one, I have a minus minus, which is this bottom one again. So I have a plus minus for my signs. If that's x squared, I do x and x. And if I have negative 35 and it has to add up to negative 2, can you guys think what that would be? 5 and negative 7. Very good. Because 5 plus a negative 7 is negative 2. So the 5 goes with the plus, the 7 goes with the minus. Now we have it all factored. And another thing I just want to remind you guys of, you can only cross 2 things out if one's on top and one's on bottom. If you have 2 of the same on the top, you can't cross them out. You have 2 of the same on the bottom, you can't. One has to be on top, one has to be on bottom. So we have an x plus 3, but notice on the bottom, we don't have an x plus 3. We do have an x minus 7 on top and an x minus 7 on the bottom. We have an x minus 4 and an x minus 4. And that's it. So what we write this at the end, we have x plus 3 on top. And then you're going to keep these bottom 2 in parentheses. and don't multiply them out. And that's your answer. Now, this last thing is where we have what's called complex fractions, and it looks a lot harder than it is, I promise. Okay, what this is this fraction divided by this, they're actually called a rational expression. So think of this as this fraction divided by this fraction, okay? So the first thing I would do there is I would just rewrite it, okay? And when I do that, what I have is a squared minus 16 over a plus 2. And it is divided by a squared plus 3a minus 4 all over a squared plus a minus 2. Okay. Now what we have to do, because it's division, we have to change that to multiplication and flop these two, or switch those two. So I have a squared minus 16 over a plus 2. The first thing does not change. And then over here, I'm going to flip it. So I have a squared plus a minus 2 over a squared plus 3a minus 4. Okay. So here is what I'm going to do then. I am going to factor as much as I can here. Okay. So we have this times this. Okay. This up here, when I think about could I factor it, think about difference of squares. You have to have a minus. Variables have to be to a power of 2 or 4, which you'll always just have 2. And whatever's in front here, which would be 1, and 16 have to be perfect squares, which would be on that chart on the back of your factoring sheet. And 16 is a perfect square. So that's difference of squares. When we factor difference of squares, one is plus and one is minus. This is a squared. We put a and a. And then we put the square root of 16 here and here. So 4 and 4. On the bottom here, we have a plus 2. There's nothing that goes into both of these. It's not difference of squares because it's not minus and a is not squared. So we just leave that. There's nothing I can do with that to simplify it. Then I come up here and I have a trinomial. So I'm going to do my 2 parentheses. Notice it's a plus and a minus. So it's a plus and a minus, which would give me a plus and a minus. So that's this rule right here. And then if it's a squared, we do a and a. If that's -2, what I want to do is find 2 factors of -2. And this is assumed to be a +1. So can you think of 2 factors of -2 that add up to 1? We'd have to do 2 and 1. And if that's positive, which one of these would have to be positive? The 2 would be, okay? So 2 times -1 is -2, and 2 plus a -1 is 1. So what that means is come back over here, your 2 is positive, your 1 is negative. Then we come down to this one to factor. And it's plus minus. Plus minus is 3 again. So we have a plus and a minus. And then if it's a squared, we do a and a. And then the -4 comes here. The +3 comes here. And then what would I do here? What are 2 factors of -4 that add up to 3? Or a -1, very good. So 4 plus a negative 1 is 3. So one of these would be plus 4, one would be minus 1. Okay. Then I start crossing out. One thing has to be on top, one thing has to be on the bottom. So my a plus 4s can cancel. Then I have my a minus 1 can cancel. And I have an a plus 2 can cancel. The only thing I have left is an a minus 4 on the top. So I would just write it like that. If you only had something on the bottom, this is important. Let's say that a minus 4 was on the bottom and it's the only thing you have, then you'd have to write 1 over a minus 4. So if you have only one thing on the bottom, nothing on the top, you put it on the bottom, you put a 1 above it. Now, if we look at this one, we have x squared minus y squared over y squared minus 49 divided by y minus x over y plus 7. And again, you guys, when you get good at these, you could change this to multiplication and flip these as you're writing it out to save a step. You certainly could do that. Over y squared minus 49 times y plus 7 over y minus. Okay. Now, what I'm going to do when I look at two things connected with a minus sign is I'm going to think, is it difference of squares? So we have my x is squared and my y is squared, which is what we want when we have difference of squares. We have a negative sign. And the numbers in front of that x and y are ones. So that is difference of squares. But this is one we haven't looked at for a second. So let's look at this. When you do difference of squares here, you have a plus and a minus. If that's x squared, we do x and x. If that's y squared, we do y and y. Okay. Then I'm going to look at this one, and this also is difference of squares. The y is squared, we have a minus sign, and 49 is a perfect square. So I would go plus and minus, that's y squared, I do y and y. And just to show you how you can tell if something is a perfect square if you don't know them by heart, this should be on the back of your factoring flow chart. And 7 squared is 49. So if I come back here, what I put in these two spots is the square root of 49, which is 7 and 7. Then I have y plus 7 on the top. And if this is y minus x, you just bring that down like that. There's nothing you can do to simplify that. Now I'm going to go and try to cancel things out. So I have an x plus 7 on top, or I'm sorry, y plus 7 on top and y plus 7 on the bottom. When you have x minus y, when you have x minus y and y minus x, you remember this from last week? When they're connected by a minus, you can change one of them to look like the other by just putting a minus 1 in front of it. Okay, so you can flip those and put a minus 1 in front of it, but it's only if it's negative.
Do we have to put the 1 or can we the 1 out?
Put the negative 1.
Yeah, do we need the 1?
Yes. Or can you just do a negative?
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah, you could actually. I typically just put a negative 1 out front, but yeah, you could put a negative. That would be okay. So now I can cancel those. Okay. And you only do that when they're minus. Now on top, I have a negative 1 and I have an x plus y. And on the bottom, I have a y minus 7. And that's my answer. Now we have one more. So we have x squared minus x minus 2 over x squared plus x minus 6. And like I said, if you wanted to skip a step, you could change it to multiplication right away and flip those, which I'll do. I'll make this x plus 3 and this x plus 1. So we have to factor two trinomials again. And when I do this one, it's minus minus, which is this fourth one down here. So I have 1 plus 1 minus. Then it's x squared, so it's x and x. And then it would be, I would think about what are two factors of -2 that add up. This would be a -1. Two factors of -2 that add up to -1. And it would be -2 times 1, -2 plus 1. So by the negative, I'm going to put a 2. By the positive, I put a 1. Now for this next one, I would have two factors of a -6 that add up to a +1. If it's a plus and then a minus, that's step 3 here, where I have a plus and a minus. And I do x and x, and if it's -6, I would do either -3 and 2 or -6 and 1. What do you think would work there? Or +3 and -2? Which one would work? It would be 3 times a -2. And then 3 plus a -2 is 1. So by the plus, we put a 3, by the minus, we put a 2, okay? Then we can just copy this down because these are factored as much as they can. So now I'm to the point where I can cross out what I have. And notice I have an x plus 1 on top and bottom. I have an x minus 2 on top and bottom. And I have an x plus 3 and an x plus 3 on top and bottom. So what do you think your answer would be if everything crosses out? It's 1, okay? So if everything crosses out, your answer is 1. So now you guys should have the work last week. And I can find that and put the key up here, but you guys are gonna just finish that for tomorrow.
Can I take one of the test after school today?
You
Can
could.
we come on the quiz?
Do you feel ready?
Yeah.
Okay. If you want to come up in like 10 minutes and then we'll go over your assignment and
Yeah.
I'll make that fix.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yep.